today it's already June 20th. Tomorrow's summer solstice. Today we're talking about what brand messaging is and 3 essential questions to be asking as you are branding or rebranding your company. And here's why it's important. Your brand messaging encompasses the way you talk about your business. It really encompasses everything, every stage of the customer journey, every stage of customer awareness, all the things that you say about your business, all the ways that you talk about your business. And as an entrepreneur, solopreneur, the way you talk about it may be different than as you grow, as you begin to become a small to mid-sized business, you grow, scale, and bring on team members. But that's why it's so important to think about your brand messaging no matter what stage of the game you are in, no matter what stage of your company is, no matter what size your business is, how many employees, all the things. Because if you take the time to carefully consider your business, how you talk about it, who your customers are, what they need to hear at every stage of the game, then you come out ahead for a couple of reasons. One, what you're talking about is completely consistent. It's a consistent experience in the marketing, in the sales, and in the delivery and offboarding process, so that what you're selling is actually what you also deliver. And it just, keep it simple, sweetheart, KISS, right? The simplest, the most consistent you can be, the easier it is for your audience to understand. But how do you distill like this huge business with all of these things, that are intensely important because it's your baby, to what matters to your customers? That is your brand messaging. So when I'm talking about it to people who aren't as familiar, because a lot of people come to me for website copy, they're like, do I really have to do this brand messaging thing? And the answer is yes, absolutely, for the reasons I mentioned above. And then as you onboard team members, the way that they're talking about your business is consistent. The way that you're talking about it internally is consistent so that there's no slips. I have a client who talks about their audience as clients and their clients' customers because of the way that they help them serve. And because they do that internally, it is a much more consistent experience for that audience. So let's kind of get a little bit more into that visual. If you think about your brand, you might think about it as one big circle. This is who we are. I want to challenge that because your brand isn't just who you think your business is. It is also how your customers see your business. There's an external perspective that comes in here. So instead of thinking about it like one big circle, I want you to think about it like a Venn diagram. And so if you're going back to school classes, you're like, okay, remind me what this thing is. It's when you have the 2 circles or 3 circles, and it's where they intersect, where you show all the commonalities. So in the simplest form, it's like, okay, you've got one circle over here, and that's your customers. That's their problems, their pain points, their businesses, their personal lives, all the things that matter to them. On this other side, and you probably can't see this intersecting as my fingers point, but we're going with it. On this other side is your business. These are all the ways that you want to be perceived. These are your core values. These are your services. This is how you talk about what you do. This is what matters to you, all of your non-negotiables. And in the middle, that's really where your brand comes in. It's what you do and how it matters to your clients, how it solves their problems, what keeps them up at night, because what you think you do, again, may not be what they think you do. And part of it has to do with perception, but let's pick on me, for example, you may say, I do brand messaging. Cool. Okay. Your customer is like, oh, well, brand messaging, maybe I need that, maybe I don't. But I have this problem, and there seems to be a disconnect between marketing and sales, or there seems to be a disconnect between sales and delivery, or maybe it's not even quite that mature. Maybe it's like something's wrong and I don't know how to fix it. Or maybe it's like I keep hiring people and they don't understand what I do. Or I keep working with clients and they don't understand what I do. Like on and on and on. This can manifest itself so many different ways. But it comes down to there's a problem and you solve it, but the problem you solve may not be what you think it is. So you need to figure out what drives your customers. You need to ask them questions. You need to think of things that they might be saying to think of, like, I'm so tired of. I can't believe this is still a problem. This is exhausting. You're seeing how it all comes together and how it all like boils down, right? And if you're not, that's fine. We can talk about this all day long in so many different ways. But if you think about that, the central point of the Venn diagram as what matters to your customer that also matters to you, or two sides of the same coin, like, okay, this is my customer's problem. This is how I solve it. That's your brand messaging in a nutshell. And it's never that simple. Nothing is ever that simple or that easy, and that's okay. Because what I want you to be thinking about here is how you can kind of extract the information. And it takes some deep thinking a lot of the time. It takes some uncomfortable digging. And it doesn't matter if you are the company, if you lead the company, or if you work in the company. There are a lot of deep questions that you have to ask. And the more stakeholders you have, in many ways, the easier it is to come to a consensus, because you get like all of the different perspectives at once. You can look for the commonalities and move forward. But also you have multiple stakeholders and you have to get everyone on the same page, which can also be challenging. On the other hand, if it's a 1 or 2 person show, you need someone to facilitate this, to be asking the questions and to be pulling on those threads, which begs the question, you actually need a facilitator at every stage of the game, someone who can help you get on the same page. But while there are about 14 million questions that we might answer or discuss over the course of a brand messaging strategy call, or even a brand strategy call, let's start there. Maybe you don't need the full brand messaging yet. Maybe you need the brand strategy, which is the baseline of your brand messaging. But 3 questions that I always ask that are absolutely critical are, what are your non-negotiables? What will you never sacrifice? These could manifest as core values, and these are some of the other questions that usually stem off of this. But what matters to you most about your business? What are your non-negotiables? And so that's a really open-ended question, and it leads to some really interesting responses and discussions, for lack of a better way to describe it. Another one is, what do you wish people knew about your business? And that's really interesting because it can lead to a whole bunch of different questions and answers. So maybe they're talking about what their services are. Maybe they're talking about the experience. Maybe they're talking about some really big misconceptions about the industry, or not even that, not misconceptions, but maybe it's also things that drive them nuts about their industry, which, by the way, are all sub questions that I will ask based on that. A lot of times people are like, man, you just asked this, Erin. I'm like, yes, but I asked it slightly differently. And a lot of times that's the truth. Like, I will change my angle based on, what the response is, just to try to poke at things from some different angles, because it leads to that discussion. That's all important. So if the first one is, what are your non-negotiables? What's important to you? Second is, what do you wish people knew? Which can also lead to questions about services, what you actually do, all of these other things. So then the third question is, what are some common objections that people have? And while that may seem closely related to what do you wish people knew, when you know what those common objections are, you know that your brand messaging has got to do a good job of clearing those objections, whether it's in the baseline boilerplate brand messaging language, or whether it's in something a little bit more, shall we say, streamlined. Maybe it's some of the different messaging points. So some of those might, again, manifest themselves as, okay, so if these are common objections, what are people saying to get this? It's maybe not just price, right? It may be just like, I'm so tired of spending, all this money and not getting results. And then it's like, well, tell me more about what that looks like. And you can see how that spells out into some really interesting conversations. And while, yes, we can get into the weeds, it gives us some really, really interesting information to work with. You always want to consider your customer research, if you've got that. You always want to consider customer reviews of you and your competitors. But there's a lot of other really great nuggets that come from this careful discussion. And the reason that most people aren't doing this on their own is simply that it's not convenient to be thinking about. It takes some focused time to do this. And it takes having someone who is not in the day-to-day who can separate the forest from the trees. Because a lot of the time it's very, very hard to drill down to what matters to your customer, simply because when you have all of the things, they're all intensely important to you. You are focused, you're mired in the day-to-day, you're focused on all of the things. It's very, very hard to get to this focal point and drill down to what it is that's absolutely, positively the most important things. And so those are the core tenets of your brand messaging. It's who you are, what you do, who you serve, and why it matters. And the only way to get into that is to go through these questions. And again, they're your non-negotiables. What stands out to you? What is most important to you in your business? It is what you wish people knew about working with you, which can lead to, experience, things that they might be saying, misconceptions, all of these different things. And third, what common objections people have, because that leads into a lot of the voice of customer language. Like, I'm so tired of, I wish that, all of these things that truly matter. So would love to discuss this further with anyone who wants to have the conversation. You can head to erinpennings.com to learn more, contact me, or you can drop in my DMs. As always, hope that you are having a wonderful Tuesday in the middle of North American summer, Northern Hemisphere summer and Southern Hemisphere winter, and that you're up for a wonderful solstice. We'll see you soon.